Well, welcome to this edition of the Botanical Medicine Study Course with me, your host and instructor, Stephanie Georgieff. I hope everyone had an enjoyable holiday season, and with a new year upon us, which got off to quite a bang, so to speak, in numerous parts of the world, we all have a renewed sense of urgency in terms of caring for our health and well-being. Thank you to all long-term subscribers and welcome to new subscribers. I hope you all will find the coming year to be informative for your health and healing journey. Now, at the time of the posting of this video in the Northern Hemisphere, where I reside, we are well into winter. Now, in the traditional Chinese medical paradigm, winter is the season of the water element, which dominates the kidney and urinary bladder. Now, one of the best ways to ensure your health and wellness during this season is to get adequate sleep. Now, for some of us, the longer nights give ample time and opportunity for this activity. And some of us know we don't. I think there's been quite a few studies that, at least in North America, particularly in the United States, everybody's sleep deprived, which is too bad. But for this week's Herb of the Week, which might help with that sleep deprivation, we will be exploring a wonderful herb that helps with sleep and other issues. And this herb is called Skullcap. Now, there are many skullcaps in the world, and they are called Scutellarias. Now, Scutellaria is a genus of flowering plants, which is in the mint family, which is the Lamiaceae family. And the mint family is probably the most medicinal plant family on the planet. Now, the Scutellarias, all of them are commonly known as skullcaps, which I think is very cute. And the generic name of Scutellaria or skullcaps comes from scutella, which is Latin, which means small dish, tray, or platter, or little dish, which apparently the flower reminded somebody who was naming this that spoke Latin. The other reason it's called skullcap, which I think is really adorable, is that the flower looks like miniature medieval helmets or skull caps. Now, Scutellaria lateriflora is the common American skullcap. It's also called mad dog skullcap because apparently if you give this to rabid dogs, they calm down. It's also called blue skullcap because sometimes the flowers are blue. And again, this is native to North America in the mint family. And this has a wide use and history amongst the natives. The one thing that we could document in this study, this very brief study, is the Cherokees used it as an emmenagogue or something that brings on the menstrual cycle. So apparently even the Cherokees had trouble with their periods, the women did. Now, Scutellaria galericulata is a marsh skullcap, and this is native to the northern areas of the Northern Hemisphere, including Canada, Europe, Asia. And has quite a historical use, especially in the United Kingdom. However, I couldn't find anything in Culpeper, so it might be in Gerard, but I couldn't find anything in Culpeper. Now, the other skullcap, which is in wide use, and we will explore this extensively in the latter part of this video, is something called Scutellaria bicalensis. And this is also called bical skullcap or Chinese skullcap, and is native to China, Korea, Mongolia, and in the Russian Far East. And the difference between these two skull caps, the American and the Chinese, is quite profound. So it's very important that you have good seed sources if you're going to grow these things because they do different things. And you need to make sure if you buy the processed herb that you're getting what you need and it matches the Latin binomial. Now, for the American skullcap, Scutellaria lateriflora, this is just one of the most wonderful herbs, but in my opinion, it's quite underused. People seem to go to other things. And the number one thing that this wonderful herb does, and again, the leaves and the flowers are the part that a part of this plant that's used medicinally. Now, it's a nervine tonic, and it's an excellent nervine tonic. And who amongst us isn't nervous? I mean, who isn't? I always say the only people that aren't nervous are the ones that are making all of the rest of us nervous. But this is really, really good. And it's so good at tonifying the nerves that in some traditions, it's actually used as a preventative for epilepsy. It's also really good to treat things like depression, nervous exhaustion. So it's really good for that. You need to be careful with this. And again, you need to discuss this with your herbalist as well as your pharmacist and physician if you are on any type of nerve medicine, because it might potentiate. And we don't want to do that to the medicine. It's also a very powerful antispasmodic, and this was one of the things that the natives used it for, specifically for period pain. And it's really wonderful for that. It's wonderful for PMS, specifically cramps. It also has some properties like hypotensive, which means because it's a nervine tonic and it's relaxing, it will lower your blood pressure, especially if your blood pressure's up because you're a nervous wreck. And it's also an excellent sleep aid. And you can see a lot of times in certain teas, over the counter, generic teas like Sleepy, whatever. They always have these cute names for these products, but you'll often see skullcap in there. And you'll also find skullcap flowers sometimes in sleep pillows. It's really good for that. And again, the only caution with this is if you're on any type of medication for depression, anxiety, or you're taking regularly, which I hope you don't, over-the-counter sleep aids. Because these over-the-counter sleep aids that have cute little pictures and commercials, they can be just as addictive as prescription things. But if you're taking those, you need to, if it's a prescription, you need to talk with your pharmacist and your physician. And if it's over the counter, you need to stop taking that before you start taking Skullcap. Now, there are all kinds of lovely constituents, like there are in any plant. And the active constituents of skullcap, the American skullcap, there's a volatile oil. Sometimes you can get an essential oil of this. There are tannins, which means it's astringing. There are also flavonoids, which is basically any type of antioxidant active constituent of the plant. And there's something called an iridoid. And this, you're looking at an iridoid, but you already knew that, right? And it's called catapol. And these are a type of monoterpenoids, and they're found in a lot of plants, lots of plants, particularly anything that's got a nervine quality to it. And the one iridoid that's found in American skullcap is called catapol. Now, what's really interesting is the studies done on iridoids in general and somewhat catapol individually is that these are hepatoprotective, which is a fancy name for something that's really good for your liver. And all of us, if you're nervous, it's hard on your liver. And if you live in a, modern environment, you're exposed to toxins. I mean, if you breathe, you're exposed to toxins. And so this is a really good plant and a constituent within Skullcap that helps protect your liver. Also, this constituent is an anti-inflammatory. It also has hypolipidemic activities, which means it helps lower blood fats, and it also helps even out blood sugar. So there's all kinds of lovely things that this little constituent inside Skullcap does for you. But again, this catapult is available in many different plants. Now, there are all kinds of ways to take Skullcap. It's not recommended, just I'm telling you what the literature says. It's really not recommended for children. But I think, school age teens is fine. And you can take it. There's no like overdose reports that I found. I don't know if they've stuffed rats with tons of this and found that they died after 1,000 pounds. But I haven't read any toxic studies or other cautions other than taking this with some sort of psychoactive or nervine active or sedative or plant or drug, excuse me. So you can take it in a tea form. As I said, it's often sold in combination with other sedative herbs, or you can get it by itself. There are all sorts of tinctures on the market. You can get alcohol-free or alcohol-full. You can get capsules, which are usually powdered forms of the leaves and flower. And you can, like I said, you can take tea, capsules. My only caution is if you're out there with heavy machinery, if you're a tractor driver, you might not want to do this at the beginning of the day, but it's a wonderful herb in, the evening to help with all sorts of things. And for those of you that are suffering from PMS menstrual cramps, you can also make a really strong tea and soak like a cloth in that and put it over your tummy. You can put it in your foot baths and you can also drink it. There's all kinds of lovely ways that you can take this herb. Now, there's all kinds of information on how to grow American skullcap. It's a wonderful, obviously, pollinator. It's a gorgeous plant. And I've got links in the program notes, which is a wonderful article that has seed sources and all kinds of stuff for that. So definitely check that out. Now, the other herb, is the Chinese skullcap, and this is the Scutellaria bicalensis. And the name of the medicinal part is called Scutellaria bicalensis radix. Radix essentially means root. And it's also called Huang Qin in Chinese medicine. And this herb is just found in lots of formulas. It's rarely taken by itself. It really is rarely taken by itself. It's very bitter and cold. And so any type of issue with heat, this herb usually is tossed in for good measure to the formula. And now it enters the lung, stomach, gallbladder, large intestine, and bladder meridians. So this helps all of those organs. And this is a case where the common name of a plant, specifically in English or direct English translation, is not that useful. You really need to know the Latin binomial. And the only thing I can see in this is the leaves are a different shape than the North American one, and the flowers are actually much larger. But you really need to know this Latin binomial. This is very, very important. And as you can see, they do a lot of different things. Now, most of the studies, if you look things up in various scientific literature or websites, most of the studies done on the word skullcap is the Chinese skullcap. And as we said before, it's native to China, parts of Russia. And this herb is used for anything for heat. And heat, as you can imagine, fever, redness, but also bleeding and also anything to do with yellow discharge. So this could be a sore, an ulcer from your nose, from your, coughing up. So it's really good for cough due to lung heat, which you and I would know is a very serious bacterial pneumonia. And it also is really good at relieving fever. And again, it's the root that's used with this. Now, some of the studies of Chinese skullcap say that it reduces the symptoms of diabetes and hypertension. The other thing that's really interesting is they've done some pretty fascinating research on this as a treatment for malaria. And as we overuse medications, we're basically making the insects that cause malaria stronger. And we're also making the bugs that cause malaria stronger. So we're running out of drugs, and that's where natural medicine comes in. So there's a lot of promising research on this. It's also really good for relieving things like jaundice. That's that hepatotoxic properties. If you have blood in your urine and stool, this is a good herb for that, but make sure to get a full workup to make sure the origin of the blood is checked out. You don't want to have cancer or something and think that you're going to take Huang Chin and it's going to get all better. The other really interesting thing about this herb is the Chinese process it in several ways, and each way they process it addresses a specific issue. And one of the first ways is the root is charred. So they'll kind of like dry fry it till it's nice and crunchy. And then they grind it up and they'll use it to stop bleeding. And they'll make a poultice of this and put it on, the bleeding. And then they'll also take it internally to help with that. Another way they process it is they steam it in wine and they stir fry it in wine to address lung issues. So if you get a formula with Huang Chin for a very serious bacterial lung infection, it's probably steamed in wine. Now, the dried and unprocessed root is used for clearing heat. And the fresh root, which is usually used as a tea, is used for diarrhea. And again, you need to be careful with this. This is why you need to get a good diagnosis. Because in Chinese medicine, and I'm not kidding you, there's 60 different ways, 60 different ways to get diarrhea in Chinese medicine. So you need to be using this for diarrhea from heat, because if you use it for cold, it will make it worse. So here's another plug for getting a formula designed for you specifically from an acupuncturist or Chinese herbalist. Now, if you wish to grow this gorgeous plant in your garden, as my wonderful go-to, the Chinese Medicinal Herb Farm by Peg Shafer. This is by Chelsea Green Publishing. And I have a direct link in the program notes. I think it's on sale this month. You might want to check that out, almost half price. So if you see this in January, I would get on that website and order this. But it's really a beautiful herb. And this book has an extensive chapter on how to grow it. So however you want to incorporate this lovely plant that apparently looks like medieval helmets, which, I wasn't alive then, so I can't tell you what the helmets looked like. If you use the North American variety or the Chinese variety or the European variety, there's so many ways that this beautiful plant from nature can really assist you in your wellness needs. So this is Stephanie Georgia saying thank you so much for spending your valuable time with me. Make sure to check out the links in the program notes for all thing interesting that's related to Skullcap. And until next time, be well.